Today we're looking at data integration, specifically around ETL and data migration, and we have a special guest, Sandesh Gawande from iCEDQ, Chief Technology Officer. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So this is an interesting topic. It's really about QA and QC with regard to ETL and specifically with regard to some very important data integration projects. How did it come about, and what kind of problems are you solving with this sort of technology?
There are two parts to the question, right? How did I come to this realization of the problem, and how do we solve it, right? My specific background has been in the data-centric system for last 16, 20 years, right? Focusing on data warehouses, migrations, data integrations, ETLs, and things like that. And what I realized that while there is a lot of focus on data architecture, a lot of focus on maybe nowadays on ETL, but nobody's talking about testing ETL process, monitoring ETL process. So from a company point of view, where nowadays most of the projects are data-centric projects, like you might be doing some big data project, data lake project, migration project, integration project, MDM projects, right? All these projects are running, and none of them have focused on automation, testing of these systems, and that creates a huge risk for companies. And my job, when I was doing these kind of projects, I realized at some point that even though it is not fashionable, somebody has to focus on the quality assurance and quality control of these data processes. And that's where iCEDQ, which stands for Integrity Check Engine for Data Quality, came into picture.
Well, and that's really it. It's a quality assurance process that is incredibly important with regard to specifically some of the industries that are under federal mandate to get this sort of thing correct.
Yeah, so if you look at a banking finance industry, right? So there is BCBS 239 regulation under SOX, where they say every time you move data from one place to another, you need to reconcile. You need to treat data as you treat money. So you need to audit. The question is, it is not just applicable in production, you also have to do it in development, right? If you go to insurance industry, there is the Solvency II Act, which says you need to monitor, check, audit, test your system. There are a lot of compliance regulations that once you are done with the project, I will ask you, internal auditors, show me the proof that you actually tested the system. And most of the big billion-dollar companies don't have anything, so they're doing still manual testing. Recently GDPR came in. GDPR has rules in terms of what kind of data you can have, like you cannot retain a customer for more than 7 years. So do you know that you have data, a specific customer older than 7 years, you need to get rid of those customers. So there are a lot of things. There is regulation, and then anytime you are reporting this data to customers, by far you have to audit the data, you have to monitor, you have to test. And I think that's the driving factor behind this product.
So with regard to industries that are under those sorts of federal mandates and with GDPR, international mandates, obviously I can see how they would be inclined to want to employ a solution like this. Where within the organization do you find traction in terms of the team that would be assessing this sort of thing?
The 70% traction we found is in the quality assurance department. Any big company that has a QA team for data-centric projects, and you will be surprised many companies don't. Right? And there's a new concept of DevOps has come in, where you need to automate your development and testing and release management. How can you implement DevOps when the CIOs and CTOs are talking about it, when you have not automated your testing? So if data-centric projects, they're not doing any DevOps, they're not doing any DataOps. They're just doing some kind of manual work, and then,
Well, and so what are they doing if they're not using a solution that's as developed as...
Three things we observed. Number one, many companies don't have a testing team. They just do unit testing. They don't actually do much testing. Some people who do testing do manual testing. So imagine in a big data world where we are talking about billions of records, You were manually checking 100 records or 1,000 records to test the ETL process. Some people actually create the process manually. They recreate the ETL instead of rule-based system. They try to recreate. The QA team recreates whatever the ETL team did to check that ETL did the correct job or not, right? So it's like antique. It's like using a square wheel.
Right.
It just doesn't have any meaning.
Well, and with the advancements that are happening right now with regard to the sizes of data sets that are flowing through these systems and the increased speed at which they're flowing through the systems, it seems like the squared wheel isn't gonna spin
Absolutely
very well.
not, because I'll tell you what, there are two things that has changed in the industry. One is the scale, and second is the performance or timing. So actually people confuse performance and scalability as the same thing, but they are two different things. Performance is more like, I have a process, how fast I can finish, right? But if you take the same process and apply it to a high scale, like trillions and trillions of record, it doesn't even work. It will start and within 1 minute it will fail. So what we have done is with iCEDQ, we developed a standard edition, that is the Java kind of thing that goes and tests it. But we also came up with a big data edition which creates MapReduce and Hadoop clusters and Spark jobs to test this thing. So the bottom line is this: you can either continue paying money to consulting companies to do manual testing. You can keep doing that and spend money, TMR, right? Time, money, and resource, right?
Right.
Or you can automate it and not only save your money. What about your credibility? That's intangible. I delivered a project which is accurate versus I delivered a project that is not good. It's not delivering good data. Compliance, right? And increasing test coverage, and there are a lot of detailed things, right? But the fundamental issue is I just can't understand in this day and age, people are still doing manual testing. It's like my grandfather used to use a bullock cart. We're still in the...
Well, and it strikes me that having a third-party vendor come in that doesn't necessarily have a care as to whether what's going to come out, as long as it's coming out correctly, that there's a certain comfort in that you're not trying to paper over anything, or you're just trying to report the facts, right?
Yeah, but see, when they go to the third-party consulting companies to test their system, when they outsource it, the thinking is, I don't care what they do, right? And so if they do manual testing, let them do manual testing. But what managers don't understand, they're still paying the consulting fee, even if it's outsourced, right? And if they don't deliver at the end of the day, it's your job and my job at stake. How does it matter, right? It's in-house or outside. I went through this cycle personally, right? And I laugh at myself. I'm not laughing at others. I'm also laughing at myself. For so many years, I didn't even pay attention to this thing because I was more interested in the architecture and how beautiful my design is and all that. Testing, who cares? Not glamorous.
So what resistance do you get? I mean, what kind of objections do you have to kind of overcome as folks think about this?
Most of the time we get is not my problem, like because testing is not evolved in the data centric systems. So there's a different team or if they have one, and the testing teams, the QA teams usually don't have budget, so they say, it's not our problem, we don't have money, but it's a data issue, so talk to the data architect. So that's one kind of problem. Some people just want to continue their old ways of manual testing. Some companies have something built in-house. And I thought when I came in the industry in '96 that build versus buy is already settled. If you can buy it, you don't build it. Like, what a banking company is trying to build testing solutions inside the company. Right. Like, great. That's why the banks are doing so well, right? Either it is like outsourced, so they don't care, or they have something in-house, and it's just not a priority. Many times it's just not a priority. So usually the people who come to us are the people who want to change the way companies are changing, the heroes, or there are people, the projects where they were looking for this solution and they realize later in the project when the whole design, they spend 90% of time talking about designs and all those things, and then when implementation comes, they realize that the project is failing, and that's where we should have tested better, how can we test, and then that's how we get response from the client. When the project is in either trouble or somebody new comes in and wants to implement new ideas.
And how long does an implementation take with regard to the testing segment?
See, if you look at this, right, if you look at the old model, right, you develop, you get the requirements, you design, develop, test, and then deploy, right? So with a solution something like this, you heard like test-driven development and agile and all these things. You can actually, of course it's automated, so you have to build the rule once and then it runs automatically. And since it's a graphical-based solution, so you save 70% of your rules development time or test cases development time. But basically, it has the capability to shrink your timeline 33% because the sequential waterfall model you don't need to follow, because as you get the requirement, you can split into developing your data processes, be it for data lake or Hadoop or whatnot, and on other track you can use to build these rules, right, to test those processes. Because what we believe is in black box testing, we are not going and checking the code of ETL process or the Hadoop process or MapReduce. We are saying what was the process supposed to do, and based on the technical requirement and the business requirement, what is the output that I got in the system. So within a week's time, a month's time, the people are, the basic problem that they will face is not the tool. Tool is easier than obviously writing SQL and scripts and shell script and Java program, is getting the concept of auditing versus transaction. Doing transaction is not same as auditing. Development is not same as testing. So getting this culture of quality assurance and quality control in the data-centric world, that is the problem. That takes time people to take, this is how I should think about it.
Well, and it's also, it's the extension of it, right? So it's not only the testing of the actual ETL process, but it's the ongoing QA as the process continues to run.
Yeah, so I'm a mechanical engineer by education. So when we build product, we check your machines and all those things, right? That's called quality assurance, right? You make sure all the inputs are correct. And then when the product is being manufactured, you do QC, quality control. You take a sample out of the piece and check what's going on, right? Your data factory, why is not applicable? It's an engineering concept. So my company and what we believe is, as you test, you take some of these rules for testing that you use before deployment and then apply them in production and do your quality control. Because you have to make sure not only the development part is correct, and you also need to make sure the production process are running correctly. So you might say, if I had developed the process once, why I need to test it again? Or why do I need to monitor it? Simple things, right? You don't have no control on the kind of data that you're getting, right? So there might be a use case or a sample data which your system is not designed to handle. You got a new customer type which was never existed. Now your ETL process doesn't know how to deal with it, right? Your process might run twice in the same day when you were supposed to run only once. You might receive a file, the process runs successfully, but it had no records inside it. That's why it said it's successfully run. So the idea that I have a control M autosys, some kind of process orchestration tool, and that is doing my monitoring, it's crazy. It doesn't work. You need to not only check that the postman has delivered, you need to check the envelope. Is this the letter that you want to see? And that is the responsibility of QC. You can't, again, it's nice that the government is actually smarter in this, and they're saying you need to implement rules to monitor your system. Because BCBS 239 talks solvency and SOX and other things. Right?
Well, this is fascinating. It's certainly something that we would encourage you to learn more about. Go to Solutions Review, our data integration site. We're covering the sort of solution and the implications therein. We would also encourage you to go to iCEDQ.com and check out Sandesh's solution. It is something that you need to know about. It's the kind of important add-on that may not be as glamorous as some of the fast, swanky data solutions out there, but it's the kind of thing that'll keep you out of the weeds and keep you safe and sound. So thanks very much for coming and helping explain it.
Thank you.